Hello and welcome to the Logic of Revolution section of Watching Revolution channel. Today we're going to talk about a general method of argumentation. You can find a whole host of videos on YouTube about logic, reason, and persuasive arguments, but I'm going to present one simple method that you can follow to understand basic arguments, how to build them, and how to respond to them. We'll deal with parts of the initial argument, criticisms of the argument, and how to build a larger argument out of smaller arguments. The initial argument has three basic parts. It has the premise, in which you assert some fact, definition, or opinion, the link that connects the premises together. Finally, the conclusion states what you clearly mean with the other two premises and builds the relative strength of the argument. Premises make up all arguments. One should understand that any basic piece of information used can support your argument. You can use a definition, history, personal values, or beliefs as a premise, but you should remain clear on what it is and how you mean it. Here are some examples of uses. One can use multiple definitions for the same thing or specify what the definition means that you're using. For example, a revolutionary can mean one who tries to overthrow the government, make new art, or invent something technologically that changes the world. History can range from some specific event, like the Civil War, to a personal event, like attending a rally. Finally, values or beliefs form the basis of our opinions and views, and basically what we hold is true. One shouldn't focus too heavily on any of these things, because we're going to deal with that later. So, I'm going to give you two sets of propositions. I'm not going to say whether they're true or not. They're there to help it make very clear what a premise is. 1, Rosa Luxemburg is a communist. 2, we should provide aid for people in need. 3, communists are the best. 4, the United States is providing $5.4 billion in aid to Yemen. These are all propositions, whether they're true or not. Propositions in an argument depend on a link. The argument makes links between the two propositions, either explicit or implicit. Sometimes one will find it useful to make the link the same term, like Rosa Luxemburg is a communist and communists are the best. You can clearly see how both the propositions are linked by the word communist. However, you can look at different propositions, workers should build workers' power, and most unions build worker power, to see the link between the two propositions doesn't depend on the placement of the sentence, linking workers, building workers' power, building unions. So that being said, you can look at the following argument, and I use the term argument lightly. The United States pursues an imperialist foreign policy. My boss is awful. The United States should stay away from any wars in Africa. Each of the sentences is true. However, nothing links any of them together. However, you can see that every single premise can be false while still having good links. Here's the example. All capitalists are alien lizards. The alien lizards don't care about us. Capitalists don't care about us. The argument is complete. It's clear, and the links themselves are true, but each proposition individually leading up to the conclusion are false. Finally, we arrive at the conclusion. The conclusion consists of your various premises connected together with links into a final form and that makes the point that you want to make. Any conclusion's strength comes from the previous premises of the argument and the links between them. Let's look at two conclusions from two different arguments. First, we'll look at a good one, then we'll look at a bad one. First, Rosa is a communist. Communists are best. Therefore, Rosa is best. The second one that I'm going to give you doesn't follow, as we shall see. We should provide aid for people in need. The United States provides $5.4 billion to Yemen. We should be providing $5.4 billion to Yemen. you can see how this conclusion doesn't really follow from the premises. You can see the general flow of each argument involved in both. However, let's deal with the second argument as we move on to talk about criticisms. Criticism should deal with primarily the evidence or the link. Generally, one doesn't criticize the conclusion. That's a little more complicated. We'll deal with that in a later video. Rather, it's better to give a criticism of the argument, either the explicit premise and links, or by showing hidden premises or hidden links. Criticisms generally include two parts. First, you should state the proposition you're criticizing. Second, you should state the actual criticism, why you think it's wrong, or it's invalid. You don't have to provide an argument showing you're correct. You don't have to provide an alternate argument. It's not necessary. Do not think you have to provide an argument. Do not let anyone convince you that you have to provide an argument, because that's a very common strategy of people who make bad arguments to distract you and making you think the burden of proof of an argument is on you, even though what you're really showing is that their argument is bad. Let's see how we can use criticisms on the second argument. First and foremost, let me tell you that the year is 2023 when this video is created. So concrete reality in whatever time you're watching this may be different. Moving on. The first premise is the argument. We should provide aid for people in need. Very few people, besides sociopaths like Ayn Rand, would disagree with it. So let's move on to the second proposition. The United States provides $5.4 billion, with a B, dollars to the people of Yemen. Here we see numerous criticisms. First, the $4.5 billion is not being given to the people of Yemen. Instead, it's being given to the Yemeni government, which does not represent the people of Yemen. And we don't need to pretend that it does. Regardless, let us further notice the criticism of aid, which implies the money is aid. In fact, it is military technology and weapons. Here we see strong factual reasons to doubt the evidence of the statement. They're giving aid. This means the link between the first premise and the second premise doesn't work unless you twist the words around to mean weapons. We do not criticize the conclusion itself. Rather, we criticize the premises of the conclusion to show that it doesn't follow. The conclusion we should provide aid for people of Yemen has no argument defending it. Like most people, I agree we should provide aid for the people of Yemen and most other countries. However, this particular argument doesn't follow. We're being misled. It doesn't follow that giving weapons to the government of Yemen helps the people of Yemen in any way. However, you'll notice this conclusion gets pushed on you by people who are trying to hide what they really mean and what they're really saying. They want to give weapons to an illegitimate regime. Their argument becomes crystal clear the more we think about it, and the criticisms become deeper the more they try to defend it. This provides the basic tools to build an argument, so let's briefly touch on larger arguments. First, let's return to Comrade Rosa for a moment. Some idiot says, Rosa isn't a communist. It's easy as long as we ignore all of our anarchist and non-communist comrades and say, a communist fights for the betterment of the working class. Then we can say, Rosa fights for the betterment of the working class. It's not hard to see where it goes from there. Rosa's a communist. You can build and expand this general argument by making smaller arguments where you either anticipate or you do face actual criticism. This provides you with a general framework you can use to build and understand arguments. I'll deal with different fallacies and types of arguments and evidence in later videos. But thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe.